about mindful eating and intuitive eating, which is just a newer approach here as we just focus on health and a way of eating that feels good to us and that doesn't necessarily have a one-size-fits-all, which is kind of my title. So I know it was a very different way to come in today and to get food, but not necessarily eat it right away. So I am going to jump right into that so that you can go ahead and eat, but not yet. So let me just walk you through a little bit here and why, how we're going to get started. Okay. So traditional approaches with dieting. How do you normally know what and how much to eat? They tell you, right? Rules, right? They tell you what, when, and how much to eat, okay? But there's so much more beyond that that is individualized to you, and that's what I want to teach you in this moment right now. So if you imagine your stomach is like a balloon, right? It's like a muscle, and it has the ability to expand and contract. And so I want you to go ahead and make a fist with your hand really quick. So this is the size of your stomach at empty. It's not very large, is it? Now, as you see, the stomach can enlarge, which is why it's a balloon. We can fit more than that. We've proven that many times. Would that be fair to say? And sometimes we even get to that point where it feels like it's about ready to pop. Thanksgiving, right? Yet it doesn't feel very good, does it? And so the skills that I want to teach you today is how do you become more in tune with that? Because the beautiful thing is we're all born with it. We're born with the ability to know when we're hungry and when we're no longer hungry. Think of a baby. When they're hungry, they cry. And when they're no longer hungry, they stop eating. They disconnect from nursing, or they start refusing the bottle. They turn their head. We trust them to tell us how much they need. At some point, most of us became disconnected from these internal cues. But I want you to think about it for a second. Those cues, the urge to eat, the need to eat, or even when to stop is no different from the need to pee. Okay? It is a physiological signal that your body sends you that it has a need. We just have to relearn to listen to it. Okay? So what I'm going to teach you really quick here is what we call the hunger and fullness scale. So you see a number line there from 0 to 10. You'll see this 0 to 10. Sometimes it's written 1 to 10. It's the same thing no matter which one you go. So the space of 0 to 1 is this place where you are absolutely ravenous. Ravenous is what we call the diva or the hangry stages. You're so hungry, you're irritable, you're cranky. Right? It's not a very fun place to be. 2 is where you're starving. The urge to eat here is very strong. It's hard to focus on anything but food. At this point, your body is physiologically sending you cues to eat. Hunter-gatherer times, that's how the body told the person to go seek out food. It would send signals. So that sense of, guess what, when we're dieting and we're not eating enough, what do you think about? Food, and you can't stop thinking about it, right? That is one of the harmful effects of not getting enough to eat, is that the body sends you stronger signals to eat, okay? And so that's why it's not a good place to be there, because we're more likely to overeat when we do eat, okay? So that's that place of 2. 3 is where we're hungry. This is where the urge to eat is present. It's been persistent for a period of time, so we know we're hungry. There's no strong urgency to it yet, though. So it's a very enjoyable, satisfying place to be. We look forward to the eating experience, and it'd be very enjoyable. 4 is early onset hunger. This is where you notice emptiness in the stomach. There's maybe been some stomach pains and stomach growling, but nothing really persistent at this point. So you could eat, or you could also prolong it. Because the interesting thing about hunger is it's prolongable. Right? But yet a craving, generally not so, right? So one of the ways we differentiate physical hunger from an overeating trigger is that physical hunger can be prolonged. We can kind of put it off. But when it's a craving for something in particular, it's really hard to put it off, okay? But when we're at a 4, we can kind of put it off. We could eat, or we can wait to eat. A 5 is neutral. Neutral, you don't sense emptiness in the stomach, yet you also do not sense the presence of food. So So it's this place of being just right. You're content, it's peaceful, and this is where I call it the sweet spot because our energy needs are met. So there's really no reason to fuel up. When I think about the hunger scale, I always like to think about it comparable to fueling up a gas tank of a car. I think about this like half of a tank. I could fill up, but yet I don't really need to, right? I'm very comfortable at half of a tank. It's also the danger zone because there's nothing keeping us from eating. It's a very easy place to override. This is where boredom eating happens. Habitual eating happens. Time of the day. This is when I always have a snack, so I'm just having a snack. Environmental eating, like I stopped at the gas station, so I get a candy bar and a pop. Or I walk by the break room and there's free donuts, or there's a free cookie. Or I go in the grocery store and they're offering free food, so I eat it. Or somebody offers me food, even though I'm not hungry, I eat it. Or somebody else is eating, so I eat, right? Or there's a candy jar and I eat it because I'm passing by it. You know, it's this constant kind of food abundant environment that just triggers us to eat even though we're not hungry. Or this is where emotional eating happens very commonly too, where we eat for reasons other than hunger out of sadness or loneliness or depression or stress or anxiety or fatigue or reward, celebration, all of those other reasons. 6 is where we feel full. This is where you sense the presence of food in the stomach. You could still eat more, but at the same time, it's a very, very comfortable place to stop. This is like 3/4 of a tank of gas. I could put more, I could stop to get fuel, but I don't really need to. Again, it's very comfortable for me to drive here. Okay. 7 is very full. This is where our gas has now like automatic shut off, right? Like there's no more space for fuel in our car. Same thing with our stomach. At 7, we feel that fullness. We notice the distension happening in the stomach. And if we're stopped here, we're going to be satisfied for the next 3 to 4 hours. Usually around 6 to 7, this is where head hunger can kind of kick in, and we might say, ooh, but it just tastes so good. Or, oh, there's just a few more bites left. And it kind of encourages us to keep eating, even though physically we probably could have stopped early and been satisfied. 8, that is where we feel uncomfortable. This is where we really want to go and lay down because we're just tired. And then 9 and 10 is we get to that point where we're stuffed and we're sick. We're really wishing we wouldn't have had those last bites, right? Okay. So when we get to that 9 and above, this is where we really ignore that automatic shut-off of the gas, and it's just spewing out because there's no space for it. There's no purpose for it. So if we eat to a 7 and above on a consistent basis, we're consistently overfueling our body, providing it with fuel it doesn't need. And the body has no choice but to store it. Now, if you go to that 1 to 2 or anything below that 2, and we eat there on a consistent basis, we're underfueling our body. And in response to that, we generally overeat when we do eat because we're so hungry. Or the body naturally, as a way to sustain life, will slow metabolism down, stop sending hunger cues as much, and then conserve all of its energy as well. So neither one of them are really winning situations. Any questions on that really quick? Make sense? Okay. Oh, I'll keep coming back to this. So what I want to do now that you know that hunger and fullness scale, I'm going to walk you through what's called a body-mind scan. This is going to be a way for you guys just to connect with those cues and with some physical symptoms in your body. So I want you to just take a couple deep breaths, close your eyes. I'm going to walk you through this. Just get comfortable. And I want you to imagine a ring of lights at the top of your head. And you're going to slowly start moving that ring of light down. But I want you to notice, first as you get to that neck area, is your neck tense? Do you notice any discomfort in your neck or your shoulders? Or does it feel really comfortable and good? As you get to your shoulder blades and your upper back, how does that feel? Are you sitting against the chair? Are you slouching? How does that feel to be that way? As you get lower, now I want you to make a fist with your hand if you can. And I want you to put it right in that diaphragm area. That's about where your stomach sits. And again, imagine your stomach like a balloon. How how big is that balloon in your stomach? Is it shrunk? Is it about the size of a fist? Is it blown up? Just visualize that balloon for a moment. What do you notice in your stomach? Does it feel empty? Are there any stomach pains or growling? Has it been grumbling? Does it feel content? Or do you feel the presence of food there? Give yourself a hunger number. Again, remembering 1 to 4 is kind of that hunger side, 5 is content, 6 and above is that fullness area. And once you've given yourself that number, kind of imagine that ring of light and bring it back up and kind of gently open your eyes. So that's a very short, sweet version of the mind-body scan. It can get much more than that, but I just really wanted to introduce you to the sense of connecting with the stomach. So what did you guys notice? Is anyone willing to share what that experience was like for them? Yes.
I just whispered that I said I feel guilty because now I realize I don't need this food.
Okay, so you realize you're not hungry.
Really.
We're going to talk about guilt, okay? We're going to talk a lot about guilt. But the good thing is there's no reason to feel guilty, because if you're honoring your body by saying, you know what, I'm not actually hungry, it's okay. And the best thing that you can do is honor it. One of my clients once said, I can either throw the food in the garbage or I just become the garbage. Because either way, the food is getting wasted. Okay? Because if we take in food that our body doesn't need, our body has no purpose for it. So it's going to get wasted either way. Now, for those of you who were raised following the Great Depression and raised to clean your plate, I know that that is challenging every family value that you had growing up. And I know that. I'm going to give you some little tips to kind of help with that, because that's a common part is I was raised that we don't waste food. And so I know. But yet again, you have to honor yourself in this process, and that is what this is all about. So now what I want you to do is I'm going to walk you through the next parts, because now you get to eat, okay? So now you have this hunger cue, or this hunger number in your mind to where you are. But before you take a bite, before anyone else takes a bite, I'm out of my regular thing. I want you just to think about your intentions now, knowing that hunger and fullness scale. I'll go back a few here. Oh, too fast. Think about, where do you want to end today? Do you want to be at a 5? Do you want to be at a 6? Do you want to be at a 7? How do you want to feel when you're done eating this food? Okay, and just think, well, about how much do I need? Give or take, do I think I need to get there? So just giving yourself this sense, okay? Then, the next step is eating the food, but I want you to really eat this food in a different way than normal. So go ahead and look at the food that you have, and I want you to decide what's going to be your first bite of food. Just decide what's going to be that first bite. And when you take that first bite, take the smallest bite possible, and when you put it in your mouth, chew it very slowly. Move it across the tongue. Really seek and search for the flavor, the texture, the aroma. I want you to take your time with that bite. The more that you take your time, the more taste you get, the more flavor you get, and the more satisfaction you get. Okay, I'll give you an example of what typically happens. Most of us eat very quickly and mindlessly, right? So years ago, before I was doing this, I walked into the break room at work, and there were some chocolate malt balls. And so I thought, perfect, exactly what I needed for my next patient. So I grabbed one, and I ate it, and I thought, this is delicious, and I walked out. And then I realized it was the other dietitian I worked with who put these chocolate malt balls, and she only buys good chocolate, so I knew it was expensive. And I said, well, how come you're giving away that chocolate for free? It wasn't the holidays, you know, so I was like, what's going on? And so she said, oh, they tasted awful. And I thought, well, I just had one. I thought it tasted fine. So I went back in later because I realized the last time I watched her eat a Butterfinger bar, she stripped away the chocolate first and then ate the inside. And I was like, we totally eat chocolate different. So I went back in and I grabbed another one and I let it sit on my tongue. And 15 seconds later, I spit it out because it was burnt. It was a horrible chocolate and it was disgusting. But the first time I ate it, I didn't taste burnt chocolate because I wasn't tasting it at all. I chewed it and I swallowed it, and my head was doing all the talking for me. This chocolate, it's delicious, this is exactly what I need. Right? So after that moment, it really helped me to just slow down, take that time, and really appreciate it. Because if it doesn't meet my expectations, why eat it? And that has helped me to be able to gain power back from food. Whereas I used to walk into the break room or into a potluck and just eat, right? Because that's kind of what we do. It's a social piece. But now I can really walk away from a lot of those foods because they just don't meet my expectations. Holiday candy, Halloween candy, it just doesn't tempt me anymore. I ate a Reese's peanut butter cup that way. It's powdery, it's dry, like it just is not amazing chocolate. And so now I just walk, it just doesn't even tempt me because I don't enjoy it. Now that doesn't mean somebody else might not enjoy it, and that's okay. So that's not the message, but the message is you gotta try to taste it to see if it actually meets your expectations or not, right? Okay, so continue to eat the food that you have, taking small bites. When we take large bites of food, it's wasted at the roof of our mouth because the tongue is going to keep pushing it back, and so it's at the roof. There's no taste buds on the roof of our mouth. If you guys haven't ever taken any science classes, no taste buds up there. Taste buds are only on our tongue. So the roof of your mouth wastes food. So the smaller bites, your tongue manipulates and moves it across, and that's where you get all the flavor. So small bites, take your time with it, okay? And keep eating until either you notice you're not interested in the food anymore, or you notice it loses its flavor. Some of the most subtle cues that your body tells you that you're no longer hungry is that food becomes boring and it loses its flavor. Very subtle, and you have to be paying attention to it. So I'll talk about setting speed bumps in a little bit. But one thing I want you guys to do very purposely with the food that's in front of you is just create an initial check-in point. So oftentimes it's half the amount of food on your plate. To pause, wait like a minute or two, and then notice again. Now, where is my hunger and fullness level? If I were to stop here, would I be satisfied? Knowing I can eat again when I get hungry. And also paying attention to what the head is saying. If it's justifying, ooh, but it just tastes good. Or, oh, there is just a few more bites left. Or, I don't want to waste this food. That's head hunger. That's no longer physical hunger. Feel free to ask questions at any time too, you guys. All right, so rhythms of hunger. When we're following traditional diets, we're generally taught to follow it based on what the plan is. 3 meals a day, 5 or 6 small meals per day. It varies based on what we're listening to. But the reality is that hunger is actually erratic because it's based on many different parameters that influence how hungry you're going to be. So we're going to talk about that here a little bit. If you think about a toddler, how many of you guys have a toddler or have grandchildren? Okay? What you notice about their hunger is that it's always different. One day they're starving, the next day they barely eat. And it's still their favorite food. But they listen to the body. If they're not hungry, they're just not going to eat it. They're honoring themselves in that process. It doesn't follow a clock. Eating when you're hungry reassures metabolism. Now, has anybody ever followed a diet that said, don't allow yourself to get hungry? Right? There's this approach that was like, don't let yourself get hungry because then you're going to overeat. Right? There's this belief back then. But when we don't eat when our body is hungry, we're basically telling it that food's unavailable. Again, hunger is your body's signal to tell you that it has a need. But the important part is our ability to differentiate between physical hunger and emotional overeating. because those are two different things. And that's the hardest piece for most people, is knowing what does physical hunger feel like and what does overeating or environmental eating feel like. And again, physical hunger always has a physical symptom. Emptiness in the stomach, stomach pain or stomach growling. As it grows and we ignore it, it gets stronger as lightheadedness, shakiness, weakness, irritability, headache, lack of concentration. All of those things are physical symptoms. Whereas something that's a craving or a trigger, where do you usually feel that in your body? Your tongue. It's what we call eating from the neck up. It typically is coming from the neck up is where we're going to feel it. It's generally specific to one food, and it's really hard to postpone because it just keeps coming. Okay? So being able to pause, to differentiate, is this physical hunger or is this something else? Why do I want to eat right now? Explore that. Eating small meals satisfies hunger best. When we eat to satisfaction, we have more enjoyment with the eating experience, and thus we also feel more satisfied. Whereas when we walk away at that uncomfortable, we tend to not feel as good, right? Hunger is affected by how much you ate. If you only ate a smaller meal, then you're going to be hungrier sooner. If you ate a meal that was just carbohydrate, you're also going to be hungrier sooner. You know, a lot of people do cereal for breakfast, and then they're hungry within 2 hours. Versus when they eat eggs and toast, they're satisfied for 3 or 4 hours, right? So how we balance that out matters, and I'll talk about that later. Or if we eat a larger meal of chicken Alfredo or something like that, that's going to satisfy us for longer too, because again, it's higher fat, higher protein. So what we eat varies. So sometimes we might be hungry in 2 hours, sometimes we might be hungry in 4 hours. Or if you ate just a piece of fruit, you might be hungry in half an hour. It all just depends. Hunger is affected by what you ate. I just talked about that as well. It may be specific for a certain food. Our body does have wisdom. And so sometimes we might crave protein because maybe we do need some more iron in our system. Maybe we haven't been eating enough of that. Or maybe we haven't been finding as much balance with what I call fun foods and nourishing foods. So maybe our body is seeking out fruits and vegetables with that and trying to tell us that. When we pause and ask, what do we really want and need, your body will help naturally find this balance. And sometimes we do just want a brownie, and that's okay too. The average American eats in 10 minutes. 5 to 10 minutes is the length of time it takes the average American to consume a meal. And I firmly believe this starts in school, right? I have a 7-year-old right now, and to watch him eat right now, it's horrendous, because he comes back and he's just piling into his mouth, because at school they only get that short period of time. And so now I'm having to retrain who was this this child who ate beautifully, intuitively, and now he's just piling it in because that's all the time he gets, and they're getting trained that way. So we're trained in this environment, this busy, fast pace. Even if you think about in the evenings when we're racing to the next item, we say, hurry up kids, finish that meal so we can get down to the next thing, right? We don't allow this time to just relax. But it takes 20 to 30 minutes for our brain and stomach to communicate that you're no longer hungry. So if we eat a meal in 5 to 10, we have no way to know and to even be connected with the fact that we're no longer hungry. Until 20 minutes later, we feel it like a pound of rocks that hits our stomach, and we're like, oh man, now I'm really full. So the power of slowing down is huge to be able to reconnect those cues. Hunger can also be postponed. It can be uncomfortable sometimes to sit with hunger, but it can be postponed. You know, if you're at a floor, we can wait a little bit longer if we need to. And so that's the other thing, again, going back to differentiating between physical hunger and cravings, is that physical hunger can be postponed, whereas cravings are really hard to postpone. So that's a really important fact to notice. Hunger can also not be satisfied preventatively. So some people will say, well, if I don't eat now, I'm going to be starving later, right? And so we have to be careful with that. Because if we do it consistently, then we're consistently going to be providing our body with fuel it doesn't need. So we really want to try hard to find a way of eating that also builds on our hunger cues. So we can talk about that. A common example here is someone will say, well, I get hungry. I'm not hungry when my family goes to eat. So like at 5 o'clock when I get home, everybody's starving, but I'm not hungry yet, kind of a thing. So we look for patterns. If you're constantly not hungry when you're supposed to be hungry because you have a clock that you do have to follow, for work or whatever it might be, then we just look to see, well, how are you eating before that? And can we change it so that you are hungry at that time? Or if you have a certain schedule that's coming up that you're not going to have an opportunity to eat, maybe we do need to eat a larger meal at that time so that you're satisfied to carry you through that time frame, right? So we can eat strategically in a way too. Okay, so when is the best time to eat? If we're at a 5 or higher, we're not hungry. Our energy needs are met. If you checked in and you're at a 5, energy needs are met. Now, does that mean you'll never eat here? No, not necessarily. Because guess what? On occasion, we eat anyways. And that's okay. Because you know what? Maybe we are celebrating somebody's birthday or something, and that piece of cake is our favorite cake. And it does look really good. And you know what? That's okay. Now, if we always eat at a 5 or higher when we're not hungry, and we're always ignoring those cues, then that's going to lead to an impact. So on occasion, nothing's going to happen. But if we do it consistently, it's going to make a difference. So what I always like to say is a choice is just a choice, unless it's a behavior. So if we do something every single day, that's a behavior, and it's going to have an impact on our health. If we just do it on occasion, not really going to be a big deal. Now, that only applies to food. Right? It does not apply to other items, but only food we can apply that to, especially for my adolescent population. All right. So, if we're at a 4, you could wait to eat if you know you're going to be eating within an hour. Or if it's going to be 2 hours, maybe we just eat something small to satisfy us. If we're at a 3, 2 to 3, this is the ideal time to eat. Hunger is the best seasoning. Food will taste its best when you're hungry. Have you ever eaten a favorite food and you're at a 5 or higher? It's kind of like, that's okay, right? And your head is doing most of the talking. Whereas have you ever sat down to something at a 2 or 3 and you're like, wow, this is amazing, right? Hunger is the best seasoning. Your taste buds are more prominent when you're hungry. It's pretty amazing. At a 1, this is high-risk time for overeating. Again, if we get to that point, it takes a lot more intention to slow down and to be mindful because we're so hungry. Because what ends up happening is the body just sends you stronger and stronger hunger hormones to eat, to seek out food, because it's trying to regulate all of the chemicals that are going on. So it sends you stronger cues. So you seek out richer food. So higher fat, higher calorie food during that time. And you eat faster to get it in quicker. So it sets you up. Questions? Yes.
I've got a question.
Yeah.
So, I'm a diabetic.
Uh-huh. Oh, yeah.
I don't think I can remember the last time I was hungry.
Mm-hmm.
But what my body will tell me I have to eat
Mm-hmm.
because I'll start to crash.
And are you on
They're
medication?
hungry.
Yeah.
How do you know?
Yeah. And are you on medication?
Yep.
Insulin or, yeah. And that is different. And that does have to be done very strategically if you are going to start doing more of an intuitive eating process, because you do have to then manage how much am I going to eat with that insulin dose. Because if you're dosing before the meal, does that make sense? If you're dosing before the meal, thinking this is how much I'm going to eat.
You base your doses upon what you're going to eat.
Exactly, yes.
But
It's a little bit harder. Yeah, so yes, it does work for people with diabetes, but it is a more advanced skill. It is. because you have to be closely monitored if you really are thinking right now, I'm generally overeating and I really want to focus in on how much do I really need, then you're likely going to be going low sometimes because you've been used to dosing at a higher amount. Does that make sense? Yeah. So it can be done. It just takes a lot more checking in with your CDE to make sure that let's really focus in on this, and let's look at those blood sugars, testing them much more frequently to see what's my pattern, what's happening, and coming in with that CDE once a week to adjust it then as needed. But it works. It just takes a lot more monitoring to begin with. Yeah, great question. So setting speed bumps is a way, instead of using portion sizes or points or calories to control this part of it, speed bumps is helping you just to check back in. Notice, be curious, how much do I really need to be satisfied? So how do you set these speed bumps? I gave you one example, which was maybe setting like half the amount of food on your plate, checking back in, and again, noticing. So that's one. You can also just start putting smaller amount on your plate to begin with. And just starting there, because it's a lot easier to go back for more if you're still hungry than it is to stop sooner knowing there's food on the plate. So for those of you who were raised to clean your plate, this is one of the best techniques to start with, is just start with a smaller amount because you can always go back for more if you're still hungry. Okay. All right, so other ones you can do, you can certainly explore to see what does happen when I order or serve myself less. Does it help to keep serving dishes in the kitchen versus having it at the table? So I have to get up to go back for seconds. And the most important part here is that everything you're doing with curiosity. You're saying, I wonder what would happen if, versus I have to only eat half the food on my plate. When we create these rigid rules, there's almost always a rebellion that comes out that says, yeah, well, guess what? And so we have to be very careful with that rigidity because there's always a rebel inside that's going to try to fight it. Whereas if you come at it with curiosity and exploration, it's a lot more of this like game that you're just kind of being curious about, you're just playing with it, and there's no expectations around it. So if you've ever had dieting in your past, it's one of the most important pieces, truly. Everything should be out of curiosity and exploration. The more that you bring in judgment, the more likely you are to feel guilt and shame if you don't end up meeting that expectation. Okay? You can also explore buying single servings, again, as long as it doesn't feel restrictive. If it feels restrictive, it's more likely to influence an overeating episode. Okay? But if we do buy those things, then it can work. Sharing meals, if we share meals, that can be helpful for people. Requesting a to-go container for some people, or waiting 10 minutes. But again, not saying I can't have that second portion until I wait 10 minutes. It's, I'm going to pause. I'm going to wait 10 minutes. And if after 10 minutes I'm still hungry, I can eat. Right? It's very different than saying I have to wait 10 minutes and then, we'll see. So it's wording. For some people in the very early stages, having certain foods at the house is more triggering. It's harder. Some people say, well, I can't have that food in my house or I'm going to overeat it. Now, we'll talk about what that is later. It's called a self-fulfilling prophecy, which basically is saying, if I do this, then this. And guess what? That'll happen. Okay? And we set ourselves up. So whatever you say to yourself, you will prove true. So if you say, I can't have that in my house or I'll overeat it, you will overeat it when you have it in your house. Okay? But early on, for some people, it is easier to keep it out of their home. However, with the intention that if I really, really, really want it, I can go get it. I have permission to have it. So we'll talk about permission to eat. However, then it looks like let's bring it with a safe amount. Perfect example, my husband today. He says, I really love some pecan pie or coconut cream pie. And I said, oh, he's the only one who likes it, by the way. And I said, that sounds great. Why don't you go buy a piece and bring it back home? Because if I bring the pie, we never eat the whole pie. So it just gets wasted, right? And so I'm like, just go get yourself a piece of pie, right? And the longer he waits, the more likely he is to overeat it. So it's like, go get yourself a piece of pie, bring it home and enjoy it. Yeah. So that's what we want to do. You allow yourself that permission, but you bring it within the safe amount. Okay? Because some people it is harder to bring in that whole cake or that whole pie without eating it every single day. Okay? Questions, thoughts on any of that? Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes.
I've been kind of mindful about the the pyramid.
Uh-huh.
You know, where they tell you they recommend certain serving a
Sure.
day and that kind of thing.
Yep. Yeah.
Should we be paying attention? No, I think like something like 6 pieces of bread.
Like how much
or
should you eat?
bread, you
How
know,
much
and I thought
serving?
6
Yeah.
pieces of bread a
Right.
day?
Yeah.
Come on, you know, so
Right. Yeah.
so
Yeah. I'll
to
talk
be
a little.
you're
Yeah.
gonna cover that.
I am going to cover a little bit of an alternative approach. Yes, I will. I will. Yeah. So with the approach I take, I don't give out rigid rules in terms of how much one should be eating around certain things, because I really do want people to guide it based on how hungry they are and what sounds good to them, and balancing it out with what their body needs. So when we're checking in on how should I determine what to eat, we say, well, what do I want? So what sounds good to me? And what does my body need? And what do I have available to me? Okay, so for example, in this situation tonight, you didn't know what was going to be available to you, right? So when you got here, you kind of looked it over and you kind of made decisions. So that first question of what do I want, that's where you kind of check in and say, well, what sounds good to me? And then that second question of what do I need, that's where we really focus in on honoring the body. What have I eaten so far today? What have I not eaten so far today that I know is important to my body? What are my health conditions that I need to take into consideration? Do I have diabetes? Do I have heart disease? Do I have high blood pressure? Do I have lactose intolerance or a food allergy, etc.? And how is this decision going to make me feel? And is that how I want to feel? Right? Okay, another example, I like to use my family. Both my son and my husband are lactose intolerant, and so they use that as their guide. And most times, you know what, they pass on the dairy. But there are some times where they'll choose it, knowing they're not going to feel well afterwards, but they make that choice. But they know that they're not going to feel well afterwards. But most times they don't, because it's not worth it to them. Make sense? Okay? So lately, my newest discovery is chocolate almonds, which I love. I've always loved chocolate almonds, but I'm realizing that when I have them, I don't feel as well. For some reason, they make me kind of gassy. So I'm kind of like, I don't really know if that's working for me anymore. Do I really want that? Nobody else appreciates it. But, they taste good, but in the end, I don't really like feeling bloated and discomfort. And so I might just say, now when I look at them, I do really think about that. I'm like, yeah, I don't really want that anymore. So it allows me to walk away from it. Does that make sense? Versus in the past, I would have looked at them, oh, chocolate almonds. I really shouldn't be eating those because they're really not. They're, they're chocolate, they're high calorie, whatever it is. And be like, I shouldn't eat it. But then my rebel comes out and says, well, who cares, right? You like them, eat them, right? And so it's that rebel, it's that back and forth, right? Am I being good or am I being bad? Whereas now, I own this decision. And I'm saying, I don't like how that makes me feel. So why eat it? Question?
You're using the word hunger and then your head gets in there.
Right.
I remember a few years ago reading a book it talked about stomach hunger and mouth hunger.
Yes. Very common terms as well.
And so it was saying stomach is what my body needs.
Yeah.
My body is telling me I need something.
Yes.
But mouth is where I'm nervous eating, overeating, whatever.
Correct.
So it's what my mouth, it's like a pacifier.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. I will say some people will feel emotional hunger elsewhere. Anxiety, for example, can sometimes be felt in the stomach. because butterflies, gut-brain connection can feel that way. So for anybody suffering from anxiety, sometimes hunger will feel, or excuse me, anxiety will be felt in the stomach, but it's not actually hunger, but it feels that way because we feel anxiety in the stomach too. So but generally speaking, emotional eating, all of those are going to be felt from the neck up. Yeah, that's very common terms as well. Yeah. But the important part there with that statement is, what do I want and what do I need? Notice I didn't say what do I want but what do I need. What happens when I put what do you want but what do you need? One or the other. It's one or the other, and I negate the wants. Right? How many of you ever had somebody say, well, do you really need that? I had a mother in my office today with her 16-year-old child. She was explaining how she was trying to help him. And she was like, yeah, but I'm just checking in with him and asking if he really needs that. And I was like, well, how do you feel about that? And he was like, yeah, I get really mad about that. Yeah, he doesn't want to be told. She doesn't know what he really needs. He's the only one who can decide that. And so when you ask, what do I want, you allow yourself permission and to honor what sounds good, while also honoring what your body needs at the same time. And then that third statement of, and what do I have available to me, in a situation like today, that was not in your control. But majority of the time, that's in your control, and it's your responsibility. It's your responsibility to make sure that what you want and what you need is available to you so that you can choose it when you're hungry. And that's where it is our responsibility to meal plan and to make sure that we have these foods available to us, prepped, ready to go, so that we can choose them when we want them, so that it's not so easy to go to these quick, convenient processed foods. So it is part of our responsibility to make sure that those are available. So after eating, if your hunger and fullness level is a 4 or less, there we're still a little bit hungry, and so you might decide just to eat a little bit more. Okay, maybe you create a new stopping point, eat to that point, check back in. Now how do I feel? Okay, so I kind of already covered that. You could also wait. If you're at a 4, it's only been 10 minutes. It takes 20 minutes, so maybe you do decide, I am going to wait 10 minutes. I'm at home. I don't got anything else going on. If I'm hungry after 20 minutes, I can eat again. So let me play with this. Let me explore it and see, how much do I really need to be satisfied? This is also a great strategy if you plan on having desserts. Upcoming holiday season here, right? If you aren't able to have dessert at the meal, which is, by the way, my recommendation, is to have dessert at the same time as the rest of the meal. Because when you take those first bites, those are the bites that taste the best. Okay, the last bites, when you're no longer hungry, don't have as much flavor. So the food you've been waiting for, that you're most excited to eat, now has lost all of its enjoyment. So that's really what you're looking forward to. Have it at the same time, because then you can take a bite of it and take a bite of the next food. Come back to it, take a bite of the next food. And then, if you're honoring your fullness, you stop having balanced all of it out. Versus earning your way to desserts. How many of you were raised to earn your way to desserts? Right? Finish this, and then you can have the desserts. Whereas when we allow it with everything else, we balance out the fuel by just stopping. Right? If you're going to eat the dessert, you might as well eat it with the rest of the food. But if you're at a family gathering and the dessert doesn't come out till the end, just so sad. I will bypass everything else for the French lunch bag. Then you just wait and try to stop earlier, still hungry, so that you look forward to that dessert. Okay? Or wait a couple hours and eat it then, when you are hungry again. All right. Another reason to stop at 4 would be if you are going to be eating again soon, so there's an event coming that you're looking forward to and you still want to be hungry for it, so that'd be another reason. Or if you know you're going to go exercise and you don't want to have a full stomach, that would be another reason to stop sooner. Alright, if you're at a 5, that's the perfect place to stop. You feel great, you feel satisfied, and we want to remember this feeling because it's such an empowering place. When you stop at comfortable and you're ready to move on to the next event and you have tons of energy to do it and you're not thinking about how uncomfortable you feel, it's a great place to be. It's an energizing place to be, and it just gives you more empowerment to come back to that. Versus when you walk away feeling discomfort and uncomfortable, it's a horrible place to be, right? And it takes a lot of energy to be there. Okay. Alright, so what happens when we get to this 5 to a 6 is that, as I mentioned, food loses its flavor and food becomes boring. My favorite example here is popcorn. Okay, we can all pop a bowl of popcorn if you really like popcorn and go and sit and watch a show and kind of eat through that popcorn, right? But if I were to tell myself, I'm going to pop this popcorn, but I'm going to go sit at the table. And as soon as I'm done with that popcorn, then I can go watch my movie. There is no way I would eat that same amount of popcorn as I would sitting at the movie, right? I would maybe eat like a cup of popcorn and I'd be done because I would be bored and wanting to go on to the next thing. That is how powerful that cue is when you wait to listen for it. So if there's not one thing you change walking away from today with this mindful eating experience, it's turn off the distractions when you're eating because it's so powerful. Sit and be present with the food. Alright, if we're at a 6, this again, we can feel food, but it's not unpleasant. It's a great place to be as well. This is what we kind of call maintenance eating, where when we eat to a 6 or a 7, we're generally meeting our energy needs, and so we're going to kind of stay at this current set point with where we are in our body. It's a place where we're meeting these energy needs. And we're done eating at this point. At this point, then you can kind of, again, set some ways that tell yourself that you're done eating. So you can step away from the table. You can start clearing the dishes. Some people, if they're eating out with somebody and the other person is still eating, but they recognize they're done, but the server hasn't come to take the food away, you know how you kind of keep nibbling and though you're done anyways? And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, it's gone, but I was done. Is they'll put like their silverware kind of as an X on top of it as a way just to signify that they're done eating. Or maybe they'll cover it with their napkin. You know, just these techniques to say, okay, I recognize I'm done, and this is my signal to tell me I'm kind of done. Because initially, we're habitual people, so we'll kind of keep doing what we're used to doing. So you got to set these new signals for yourself. Or, you know, like when you're putting away food, you'll kind of just like keep eating it, although you're putting it away and you're done eating. Or if you're taking care of the kids or the grandkids, you're like, oh, they didn't finish. I'll just finish those last couple bites for them. And we do this kind of automatically without even realizing it. And so just try to just pay attention and notice it. Okay, if we're at a 7 to a 10, this is where we feel very full. We feel like we eat too much. And the important part here, and I'm going to talk more about this, is not missing the lesson and not beating yourself up. So I'm going to talk a lot about that, so I'm not going to go into it right now. All right, you're going to keep hearing me say explore with curiosity. I'm going to come through these bullets here quick. So I don't encourage my patients to do food journals. So many times dietitians will say, okay, just record what you're eating and come back in and we'll talk about what that looks like, right? Instead, what I have my clients do is what's called an awareness journal. I'll have them document similarly, where they're writing down what they ate, when they ate it, but I'll have them document that hunger, right? How hungry were you before? Where was your fullness level afterwards? How did this meal keep you satisfied for versus the other one? How did you feel afterwards? How was your energy level? How was your concentration? How did you physically feel afterwards? Notice with curiosity, how did my body appreciate that meal? How did it feel to have that meal? If they're working on a specific area like IBS or certain issues, then we'll explore that part of it. And we just are constantly exploring how did it feel afterwards. Again, what I'm always trying to accomplish is helping the person to become more connected to the process, right? So that they're the driver. I don't want them to think I'm the expert. I'm not the expert of each person's body. They're the only one who is the expert. So my job is to help them become the expert of their body again. All right. Eating the right amount, so knowing when to stop eating, is not about being good. It's about feeling good. The goal of eating is to feel better at the end than you did when you started. This is actually a plate that can be purchased at that that website. I don't know, are you guys gonna share this with them afterwards, or are they able to get the PowerPoint slides, or?
If you're okay with it, we
Yeah.
absolutely can.
Mhm, mhm.
Send her an email, so we'll just, yeah.
Sure, yeah, and then that way you can get that website. Yeah. Satisfaction is ultimately what we're seeking here with our eating experience. When we walk away from a meal unsatisfied, it kind of keeps us coming back for more. Has anybody ever had this experience where you're like, you eat, you just can't get satisfied? So there's many reasons that happens. Part of it is mindlessness, not paying attention to the process of eating. Some of it is past relationship with food or the eating experience. And others, it's simply because we're not paying attention to the enjoyment of the food to begin with. Or we have what's called perceived restriction, which is we're allowing ourselves the option to eat the food, but the whole time we're eating it, we're beating ourselves up over it. Or we're saying, I really shouldn't be eating this. This isn't really good for me, but we're eating it anyway. And that actually encourages you just to eat more. There's 3 words that will always influence an overeating or a binge eating episode, and that's the words I shouldn't have. Okay? Psychologically, it plays a huge game with us. So check in, ask yourself, what do I really want? Give yourself permission to have it with attunement. This approach isn't saying eat whatever you want whenever you want it. That's not what we're saying. We're not naive to say nutrition doesn't matter. Nutrition is the cornerstone of good health. We all know that. But permission to eat it while checking in and saying, how am I going to feel afterwards? And is this what I really want? And is this what my body needs right now? Am I going to feel how I want to feel when I'm done? You're checking in with yourself and you're honoring yourself in the process. If you are trying intuitive eating and you're continually overeating and just giving yourself total permissiveness, that's not really intuitive, because if in the end you feel uncomfortable all the time, you're not really honoring your body in the process. Okay? Now, I will tell you in the beginning stages for many of my clients, it does look like that a little bit because they've restricted for so long that they have to go to the other side and give themselves permission to eat without attunement in order to heal their relationship with food. And that is okay for a period of time as we heal the relationship with food in the body in order to get to a space where they are in charge and control again. Okay?
Got a question.
Yes.
Gentleman asked you about
Mouth
compulsive
hunger.
eating.
Uh-huh. Yep.
Can you explain a little bit more how, because that affects me as well.
Sure. Yeah.
How do you curb that?
Right. Yes. So when we're eating for reasons other than hunger, so there's usually physical reasons we eat outside of hunger, environmental reasons, and emotional reasons. Okay, so physical reasons looks like I'm tired, so I'm going to eat some carbs because it gets my brain stimulated. Medications influence us to eat even though we're not hungry. Thirst can influence us to eat even when we're not hungry. I covered the environmental ones. The emotional ones. Eating because we're sad, or we're lonely, or we're depressed, or we're stressed, or we're anxious, or we're feeling sad or happy, or any of those, right? That kind of what you're referring to. So generally speaking, what's happening is there's an unmet need. And this is for majority of my clients that I'm working with, is that they use food as a way to cope. They use food as a comfort. They use food as an escape. And when we do that, we in the end still end up feeling the same way we were feeling when we started. If we were bored when we started, we're still bored. If we were sad when we started, we're still sad at the end of the ice cream bowl, right? Those emotions and unmet needs are still there. And so how I work with my clients is, depending upon where they are, okay? If I can work them through it on my own, I will. So first helping them to recognize the unmet need or the emotion that is there and give them alternative skills. So we explore it and we say, and there's actually a worksheet that I have here for you, that mindful eating handout does talk. If you're feeling this way, here are some ideas. Try these. So maybe you do need to meet up with friends more often. Maybe we do need to get out of our regular environment and could be journaling, or it could be looking at old pictures that can bring us happiness, or maybe it is going and talking with a therapist, or it can be taking a bubble bath, or just taking a bath, or going to bed early, or it can be lighting a candle, smelling something really nice. There's all different ways that we can do this. And so essentially we're just trying to figure out what's the unmet need and how can we best meet it. Okay, so it's self-care coping skills. What many of my clients are missing is self-care. We're all used to taking care of others, but we forget to take care of ourselves. Yes.
I know that some of my medication gives me a patient dry mouth,
Oh, yes.
and so that's
That's
probably
more of
my
it.
biggest
Yeah.
issue is trying to keep my mouth hydrated.
Yes. Yeah.
And diet soda has been
Yeah.
something that I've used.
Yep.
I
Ice
suggest that encourages
More
me
eating or
to go find something sweet.
sure. Yeah.
Because that's sweet.
Uh-huh. Yeah, so there it's just changing it up. Some people will chew in ice cubes, drink the water. Tea is another great one to keep on hand. Sucking on mints, that type of stuff can all be good ideas. So there's no one right way, but that's a common problem. Yeah. And so what I do encourage people to do is to create, especially if you're struggling with the emotional eating, is to create what's called a self-care toolkit or basket, tote. And then you keep that in your home so that whenever you're really struggling and you know you're not physically hungry, you can go to that and then you can just kind of grab out of that. Okay, so some of my clients will keep it in their pantry or on top of their fridge as a reminder to check in. And I think I included a stop sign in your guys' handout, right? So just as a physical reminder to remind yourself to pause, check in. It's not saying don't eat. It's saying just stop and notice. Just pause. Explore. If I'm not physically hungry, then why do I want to eat right now? What's going on? Okay, just pause. It's all about awareness. All right. So this next part, I'm going to slowly kind of bring us back into this conversation around dieting and why dieting doesn't work. So there's all these different eating styles that are common to all of us. The first one is what we call an unconscious eater. This is eating while doing something else at the same time, so this mindlessness. Then we also have a chaotic eater. A chaotic eater is somebody who lives a very busy, chaotic, overscheduled life. Eating styles haphazard, they're just eating on the go, grabbing kind of whatever is available. This person's life tends also to be stressful. There's also the refuse not eater or the waste not eater. This person will eat whenever food is available, especially vulnerable to candy jars, other sweets that are set out. The waste not eater is often influenced by monetary values. So, oh, it was on sale, or it's a really good deal, right? So I'll buy it. Or I paid this money, so therefore I have to finish it, right? I went to the buffet, I got to get my money's worth. Okay, so that's another common one here. I talked about emotional eating. A careful eater tends to be vigilant about what foods they put into their bodies and are highly nutrition conscious. While not technically on a diet, they tend to undereat and monitor the quantity of food eaten. Risk is that the careful eater can become overly diligent. The professional dieter is somebody who's perpetually dieting. Eating choices are connected not to health, but to losing weight, which often leads to binge eating and can develop into other eating disorders. Whereas an intuitive eater makes food choices without experiencing guilt, honors hunger, respects fullness, and enjoys the pleasure of eating while staying attuned to physical health. So the question becomes, why not diet? What our research shows us is that of dieters, 85 to 97% of people who've lost weight will regain that weight within 1 to 5 years. If I had a prescription medication that had an 85 to 97% failure rate, how many would want to take it? It'd be unethical to prescribe that, right? Weight loss in the short term. Diets work short term, but there is no research to support it long term. And in addition to that, it alters our metabolism. And the more that we do it, the more likely we are to end up in a larger body. That is what research shows us. And in addition, that continual rule creation really plays with that relationship with food, how we talk about food and how we talk about our body. And again, it influences the overeating and binge eating that happen, unfortunately. So it's that yo-yo. I'm either totally wound up in control or I'm totally let loose and out of control. Oops. All right. They also erode our self-esteem. I'm a failure. I'm not good enough. I can't do this. And then we don't go into the doctor because we don't want to hear it one more time that I failed, right? So it really has a negative impact on all of this. It also takes away our trust. When we're dieting, we're taught not to trust ourselves. You're basically taught, don't listen to your body because it can't tell you what to do. You gotta follow the points, follow this program. It also can negatively impact energy and performance. Right? When we're not taking in enough energy, we're going to be tired. We're not going to be able to perform at our best. And we're not going to be able to think as clearly as we should because we're not providing our body with the fuel that it needs. And it can also put your life on hold. Right? We don't go to social engagements because, well, I can't eat what's there, so I might as well not go. Or, well, I'm not where I really want to be, so I'm not going to go because I don't want to be seen. So all of these things have such a negative influence on our health. Or I'm going to take that vacation when, right? This when, this, then that phenomenon. But what ends up happening is we miss all those experiences in the process. Okay? And that's a really unfortunate thing because we're still living within that moment, right? So ultimately what we're searching for is making peace with food. And when we make peace with food, when we give ourselves permission to eat, it's also what gives you the permission to say no. So remember those experiences I talked to you about, the chocolate malt balls, my chocolate almonds now. It's the same thing that every time I walk into one of those trigger foods, I simply pause and check in. How is that food going to make me feel? And that's what determines my choice. Not should I eat it, should I not eat it? Is this, it's not good, bad in my mind any longer. And when I do that, food no longer has power over me. And because of that, it's much easier. I now am the driver versus any kind of rules or somebody else being the expert for me, right? People say, oh, did you watch this documentary? I'll be like, no, I did not. Or have you heard this diet? I say, no, I have not. Because I just don't need that information in order to know how to eat. My body knows, and I can trust it. So challenging the food police. Dichotomous or all or nothing thinking is what many of us struggle with. This all or nothing thinking sounds like, I can eat only foods with 0 grams of fat, or carbohydrates are bad. I'm never eating bread, potatoes, tortillas, or pasta again. Or maybe some of you have been told by a physician, don't eat bread, pasta, bananas, rice. Anything white, don't eat it, right? But you know what? On occasion, a good chunk of crusty French bread goes really good with tomato soup, right? But is that something we eat every day? No. So is it a problem? No. But it's those behaviors, right? We know that most times we want to eat whole grains that are high in fiber. But on occasion, can we enjoy something? Absolutely. And without guilt, okay? Or, for example, I shouldn't have eaten that cookie. Now I'm off my diet. I might as well eat the whole box and start over again tomorrow. Right? That's the perfect example of dichotomous thinking. All or nothing. I blew it. I had a piece of cake to dessert. I feel like such a loser. I can't do anything right. Again, all or nothing dichotomous thinking. Catastrophic thinking. I hear this all the time. I just recently heard this. And somebody, this is where we take one single episode and they'll say, I went there and I can't believe I did all of this and I ate that cookie and I had the pizza at the party and all these things, and I'll say, well, how did the rest of the week go? Oh, it was really good. I really listened to this. Da, 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 da. And it was like this one single moment that was just outside of what they would have considered good in their prior dieting experience, took all of, right, because of the shame and the guilt. Right? So that catastrophic thinking, unfortunately, then goes back, feeds into the all or nothing thinking and says, I'm such a loser, I can't believe I did that. And it just starts over again, and it's this vicious cycle. Pessimistic thinking. This is where we walk into an environment where we say, well, all healthy foods are terrible, right? They all taste bad, right? All those vegetables are just disgusting. They taste like dirt. da, da, da. And then again, like we just can't get outside of that thinking, right? Or it can look like I have no self-control. And so it's this pessimistic thinking that again just brings us deeper down. Or self-fulfilling prophecy, as I mentioned. If I get stressed out, I know I'll binge. If I eat too much, I have to do something to get rid of it. If I eat one serving of ice cream, I know I won't be able to stop. When I go to a party or potluck, I know I'll eat everything in sight. Whatever you say to yourself, you will prove true. Be careful what you say to yourself because you are listening. If you wouldn't say it to a friend, why would you say it to yourself? If most of us talked to others how we talk to ourselves, we wouldn't have a lot of friends. Really think about how you're talking to yourself. It makes all the difference. Those should statements, as I mentioned. I need to eat only salad for lunch or else I'll gain weight. I should never eat fast food if I want to be healthy. I must exercise every day. I shouldn't eat after 6 p.m. or all of the calories will turn into fat. Metabolism does not shut down at 7 p.m., right? However, most people who overeat tend to overeat at night. And so it was much easier for dieting companies to just say, hey, stop eating after 7 p.m. because it's a rule and it can be followed. Okay? But you know what? Some people on occasion get hungry after that because you know what? Maybe they didn't eat very much earlier on in the day. So they are hungry. But if we are overeating at night because of those other emotions, then yes, of course it's going to have an impact. Changing your mind. Listen to those thoughts. Notice, is it actually helping me or is it harming me? And reword those negative thoughts into positive ones. So checking in, learning positive self-talk. This isn't relearning for most people. Most people haven't learned how to be positive to themselves. So this looks like, I'm a good person and I like the changes I'm making. This process will take time, and the more I practice, the easier it will become. There is no on or off. You're going to be eating for the rest of your life. What this is called is a spiral of healing. You're always moving in a forward direction, but sometimes you get pulled back towards the familiar, and you make choices that were past behaviors. And now what you get to do is reflect on it, say, how did that go? Is that how I wanted to? If not, what would I do different for next time so that I feel better at the end? We're compassionate, we're kind, we just look to problem solve versus criticize and judgment. The second one is, sometimes I make choices that don't honor my body's needs. And it's okay. It felt uncomfortable and I don't enjoy that. So now I'm going to wait till I get hungry and I'm going to make a new choice that honors my body in the process. Again, compassionate. Much better than you're such a loser. Right? So honor your health, eat a variety of foods, everything you guys know, right? I will tell you, I can't tell you how many times somebody's walked into my office and at the end said, I'm so glad you didn't just tell me what I was supposed to eat. I really thought you were just going to tell me what to eat, that I was supposed to eat fruits and vegetables. Most people know this stuff. That's not what they need us to tell them, right? So this is, I know I'm running super late here. This is a really powerful slide that just shows you the impact of food choices on your blood sugar levels. That kind of helps with understanding hunger. When you eat foods that are mainly those quick-acting carbohydrates, you're going to be hungrier sooner. So if you do eat just a piece of fruit, you're going to be hungry within half an hour. Versus if you pair that piece of fruit with some peanut butter or a handful of nuts or some cottage cheese, it's going to keep you satisfied for much longer. Protein keeps you sustained about 3 hours. Fats keep you sustained about 4. So the basic principle here is balance those out so that you keep full longer. Balancing out those plates, our ideal plate is that about half that plate are vegetables. A quarter of it is some kind of protein, and a quarter of it is a whole grain. That's the ideal. Most often, we want to shoot for that. And I'm going to show you some examples here that I always like to show my patients, especially some of these other ones, like the pizza. That's a combo food, right? That's where the protein and the carb is together. Takes up half the plate, the other half the plate, we bring in a vegetable. Our kids don't go to school and provide a piece of pizza. They have pizza, they have a vegetable, they have a fruit, and they have a dairy. So balance it out when you eat it. Same thing with casserole. We're going into casserole season. I know there's vegetables in that casserole, but come on, it's not very many. And they're usually corn or peas, right? Half the plate is that casserole, the other half of the plate is another non-starchy vegetable. Have some green beans, have some broccoli, have a salad, balance it out. You give yourself more food for more nutrients. Exercise. This is another interesting area. Many people are used to exercise as punishment. right? In order to eat this, I have to exercise this many minutes, etc. Find a new purpose for exercise. It cannot be just connected to weight loss. It has to have purpose and meaning for you, and you have to enjoy it. If you don't enjoy doing it, you're not going to do it. Find a way of moving that feels good to you and a reason for doing it. I get up at 5:30 in the morning because I have more energy throughout the day. And I only exercise for 15 minutes in that morning. I do 15 minutes of some kind of resistance in my home, and I feel better and stronger every day because of it. I have more energy, I'm more alert and awake because of it. That's what gets me out of bed at 5:30 in the morning, okay? So you have to find a reason for you, though, something that's going to get you out of bed. Is it because you want your blood sugar levels to be lower and you know it's the cheapest prescription you'll ever be prescribed, right? Or is it a social engagement for you? You like going to walk because you get to see people and you get to engage. Find a reason to do it that's going to get you there. Because the weight loss part, it's going to stop as soon as you don't lose the weight. Right? People will say, well, I kept going, but you know what? I didn't see any changes, so why go? Why do it if it's not going to work? But guess what? It's working. You just might not be seeing it. So that comes into the scale and respecting the body. I don't weigh patients in my office. I do not believe that the scale is an accurate measurement, and it certainly does not measure success. So my focus is on the behavior. I focus, how are you feeling? How is your energy? What are your choices you're making? How are you feeling about those choices? What is your body telling you about those decisions? The scale does not measure self-worth. And as much as people believe it's objective and that we step on it and gives us one number, it's totally subjective because it's based on the time of the day, how much food you have, how much food you've consumed, how much you haven't excreted, etc. So it's not all that subjective, right? Or objective, excuse me. I always get those mixed up. Nonetheless, also in addition to that, we have to accept our genetic blueprint and recognize that every person's body is different. In addition to that, unfortunate as it is, our past dieting experiences have also influenced our body. And for many of us who've battled dieting and lost and gained a lot of weight, unfortunately, we've probably ended up in larger bodies than we would have had we not dieted when we were younger. So that's important information to know as you go into a physician's office and if you're getting shamed around some of that. It's important information to know to take that shame away from you. It's not your fault. What I always like to tell my patients is you've never failed, you've only been failed. Because if you've never really been given the right tools to know how to listen and honor your body, you've only been taught how to not trust it. Okay? So, with that being said, it's also important, if you're holding off on buying clothes because you think you're going to get into a smaller size, you deserve to buy those clothes now so that you feel good in the clothes that you wear. Because guess what? When you feel good in the clothes you wear, you have more confidence. And when you have more confidence, you're more likely to take care of yourself. And that's what this whole thing is about, is finding this sense of self-worth. Because you're worth it at every given moment. And that's what this is about. And I'll have a statement, that's my favorite at the end. Okay, we're at it. Okay, I just want to show you guys this video really quick. How many of you have watched The Greatest Showman? Okay, so you know Cattle Saddle, she's the bearded woman, right? This is a video and they'll describe it. So it's an extremely powerful video of her. I just want to share it with you guys. Oh, that's fine.
Benj and Justin have just written this new song called This Is Me, and we knew that it was going to be the anthem of the film, but no one had heard it before, and no one had heard Keala sing it live. And Keala, who I didn't even want to come out from behind the music stand.
I didn't.
I kept saying to her, just step out, because this is your moment, and you have to step out into the ring, metaphorically, because that's what you're doing, and you got to stand right there in front of everyone and just belt this out.
And I didn't want to. In fact, I stood behind that music stand until the day of that presentation. There was a moment in the song that I actually was so scared that I had to actually grab Hugh's hand so that I had somebody to hold on to. And then we got to the end of the number, and all I remember is just deafening applause. It was a sort of otherworldly experience.
It was one of those moments that will stay with me the rest of my life. Unfortunately, we filmed it.
I'm not a stranger to the dark. Hide away, they say, 'cause we don't want your broken parts. I've learned to be ashamed of all my scars. Run away, they say, no one will love you as you are. But I won't let them break me down, 'cause I know
how many times I've shared that with a patient and been about bawling my eyes out the whole time. It's taken me a long time to get to this point where I can watch it and just get goosebumps. Because for most of my life, I never believed in myself and I was never good enough, and I still challenge that because I'm a type A perfectionistic person, so I'll leave here today and go through everything I said and figure out what I would do differently for next time because that's just who I am. However, the number one thing I've ever given myself is self-compassion and this sense of just being able to say, I am enough as I am, and I'm always a work in progression, right? I don't have to reach perfection, and this body is the body I have. And so what I have to do is I have to make choices, or if you're in a place right now where you're making changes, you want to do it because you love your body, not in order to love your body. And that's the difference with this message versus a dieting message. You make changes with dieting in order to love yourself. This is about making choices because you love yourself. And so everything that we do is a place of compassion. And if you can begin with even there, just noticing negative thoughts that you might be saying to yourself and finding a way to turn it around, it's enough that can help to make more behavioral change for yourself. Okay, so the last slide here are some additional resources that provide you with some books that are all around intuitive eating and a non-diet approach, podcasts. If anybody listens to podcasts, these are a phenomenal resource because you get to listen to people like me who dietitians who work this way, who are interviewing others, and you get to hear, oh, that sounds like me. I know, I relate to that. And you can hear these experiences and learn and grow through them as well. There's workbooks. That intuitive eating workbook is a brand new resource that really helps people with rehealing the relationship with food and the body. So if you've struggled with chronic dieting in the past, it's my number one recommendation for you guys, would be that intuitive eating workbook if you're ready to challenge that. And then in addition to that, these are just some websites that can also provide you some guidance too. All right, any questions that you guys have for me that I didn't answer yet? I can stay after too if anybody has any questions, but otherwise, thank you so much. Yes, did you have a question? Did you have a question?
How do you respond to people who, all of a sudden we realize we've put on all this weight and we want to get rid of it, and there are a lot of people that talk to you about programs, products.
Right.
What is your response? Because I've always thought you just have to eat less and move more. Now I know you got to eat more mindfully and move more mindfully.
Right, yeah, beautiful.
But what do you say?
Yeah.
Because it's
There's no one way that works. If there was one way that worked or one magic program, everybody would be on it, right? And again, the research is, we can't argue that programs don't provide weight loss. They do. They don't provide sustained weight loss. And that is more dangerous than having just been overweight to begin with. The cycling does more damage to your body than just having stayed in a larger body and just started making healthier choices. And in fact, research shows, I don't know if I can talk for hours, I'm so sorry, guys. Research shows, there's a research study that was done that compared a traditional approach to a non-diet approach like this. They followed them for 2 years. So after 12 weeks, the traditional approach all lost weight, and of course all of their health levels improved. The second group who followed an approach like this, most of them maintained weight. Nobody lost weight, but guess what? All of their health levels improved to the same amount that the people in the traditional approach did. Now they followed them for 2 years. Guess what happened to the nutritional approach people? They all gained their weight back, and all of their health levels went right back to baseline. Guess what happened to the non-diet group? They all maintained their behaviors, and they all maintained their weight. Weight loss, weight and obesity is associated with heart disease, diabetes, etc. That's not a causation. Obesity doesn't cause heart disease, diabetes, etc. Is it associated? Yes. But the question is it really not just the behaviors? Okay, it's both. It's always a combination, right? We know that excess fat on the body does do impact, right? But what that research shows is that it's really the behaviors that improve the health more than it was just the weight loss alone. Because otherwise, the group that didn't lose weight, their health levels wouldn't have improved, right? So it's very promising research that's coming out. So just remember that part. And also know, it's not wrong to want to lose weight. It's just counterproductive. Focus on the behavior. All right. If you have questions, feel free to come back up. Thank you so much for being here tonight. Thank you. Oh, sure. And a lot of that stuff really helps. Yeah, I'm having a little problem with the most that word. I know. So the problem is that although they say it's a lifestyle, yeah, we'll just it's just that client.
There's so much stuff already doing. Doctors, you know, I'm not a saboteur, I'm not a militant exerciser. It's all about
Maybe accept that.
right. And then I noticed that, like, when I was just thinking that she could, you know, take a small bite. I hold up and just pay attention. So I hide it.
Without, like, to tell you what I did.
In one way, I sense that less because all the kids become more there, but yet it just sounds like it's a terrible addiction.
I don't have much of a taste.
And I see
Well, it's just that much, like, right? So you don't have permission to have it, so therefore. And so that intuitive people were not like overly trying. And for some people, I mean, just taking it out. I know. And then again, I'm like, really, really want to bring it in, but just make sure it's really chocolate that you really enjoy. And set yourself up for success by doing it in a environment, you know, at a time not in parties. You know, it's not really considering. From him, one of them wants you to know, and I promise you can get it. I don't think we ever did. Yeah, two sides. Yeah, it's wonderful. My husband knows if I do not say it. Well, it's not my show, it's about. He knows that he didn't know that. And so if you're doing one of your challenges, so if you're doing one of your challenges, you can ask every seller, if you do see one of those foods, because you can always tell yourself it's the way I we're in a community and they're all good, we're usually and there's that psychological component of the more you give yourself permission with attunement, oh yes, the more you can heal from that. But it's going to take practice, and it's going to take a lot of time to compose it and then passion and just require you. And so you're getting work definitely. When I grew up in Fairmont, Grenada, and when you say whenever we're starting, Thank you so much. Thank you for coming. Oh, you're very right. Sorry. No, I don't. Everybody would know. Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
Wonderful. Yeah, it's my favorite. Thank you. Yes, you're wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much. Norwegian forest cats.
Oh, yes, I know what they look like too. Wonderful.
Norwegian had to have them.
Oh, sure.
I think I learned that one.
Oh. Oh, gosh.
I'm sure.
Did you do the exercise?
Yeah.
I did it.
I got my papers, right?
He's got your back. Thank you very much.
You enjoyed it.
Yes, thank you so much. I do teach up at MSU, and I've done some employee wellness stuff over there.
Have you done anything at any church conventions or conferences?
Not that I can think of.
Thanks for coming.
I have spoken at some church things, like tops,
Are you from
but,
this town?
yeah.
I work down in Tracy, but I have a lake place. I'm Father Mark. I was a priest with Father Danny a few years ago.
Oh, and now I just feel so damn guilty. They were my babies. Yes, and I've got this kids in them. Look at their pictures now.
Well, I bet they were well taken care of.
Well, they had babies.
Yes, thank you.
Oh, yeah, that's
That's
right.
friends
Other
with
way.
Tracy though. Never mind.
I've only been there a few months,
Tracy
so I
Walnut
don't.
Grove area, yes. Thank you for coming.
Yeah.
Oh, I know.
Okay, cool.
This might be really hard for you guys to do,
Thank you.
but I always think table tents
You guys, they were.
are good things. Oh, just for marketing, either at restaurants or church fellowship halls, wherever people gather and talk. We're trying to figure that out for next year. Yeah, I know.
Did she shut
But
this
yes,
off?
a work in progress. I don't know. Yeah. Any ideas like that though? I always think when I see something come out, I'm gonna make a table tent and set it out at church so we remember to talk about it.
Tomorrow.
Yeah. Nighty night. Thank you.
Good night, thanks. Okay, let's do this.
Plenty out.
So where do all these go?
I have no clue.
Well, they can put those back, because they were in the cart.
But the roller ones we can stack a bunch up.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know where they got them all. So that's probably good, right?
Leave the non-rollers.
But that would be, well, they're gonna have to clean, right?
Yeah.
So. Did she leave?
She's in the hallway.
She did. Who?
Or went to the
Erin?
restroom or something. Speaker.
Oh.
She's in the hallway, I think. She's somewhere out there. My sock's falling off. No, here's my heel squeaking on the back.
It is the end of the day. It is the end of the day. About to ask if she shut that off. I was wondering how the sound worked when they used the microphone.
Yeah, I know. I don't know. I wondered how it's like over there when she was on the screen all the time.
Right.
You guys got it cleaned up already?
Well, we figured they'd have to vacuum, so
Yeah.
we thought. Stay encouraged. Can I just throw, are you gonna eat your cheesecake?
Yep. Power or no?
Yeah.
Oh, it says use the other one. I'm just not gonna touch it. I'm just kidding.
This one?
Oh, not that one.
What?
No, in the Willette room, not that one.
Yeah, I know. That one? Yeah.
That one. Everything they say do when they say no.
System shut down, yes.
I know.
I'll admit it.
Okay. By saying you didn't follow your instructions, so.
What'd you say she said so? Because she's a board member.
So all of these.
I didn't have
No. So just the four. And check me. Just the five. And check is her mom. Okay. Did Summer take hers? No. Okay. No, just a bunch of check marks. Okay. Can I take one? Yes. You wanted to take one? I don't know which one I want. If you go home and read it, and you're not okay, but then it's not okay. No, if you're I would say like I already know the last two. And I'm working for this great that is the work is separate, it's maybe $12 and it just takes each check.
That just like swung all over the room. Jackie, did you take your bar? I did, yeah. What did you take? Oh, okay. Okay, so Julie hers. So Denise, no, Summer, no, Kathy, no. So we have one, I think one. Why don't you just count the ones that are over? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah.
I'll just leave it there.
Stop at the door for me, please. Weird.
It's such an intimidating system.
So we might need to have Tom edit off that last part, because I was still recording on both ends.